Welcome back. Everyone is from, a lot of people are from the East Coast. Florida, a lot of East Coasters. Texas, which is not the East Coast, but you're in Columbus. I don't have the class list in front of me, but kind of a mix. Yeah, you can't see responses on this Q&A. When I put up the main screen and we have the chat, you can. Cleveland and Miami, Brandon? In LeBron lands. Brandon's in LeBron lands. Yeah, people are all over. Dallas, yeah. Okay, all right, so let's continue. All right, so I sent the email with the homework. I gave you the PN number. Also, I reminded you, make sure you can get into STS with your company ID, okay? So we're gonna do the end of day challenge, and then I'm gonna talk about some clients. Okay, and we're gonna finish early because I have a lot of people to call and because you have a lot of homework. Oh, let me show you one thing though with the homework. All right, so I'm gonna show you this. Okay, so, all right, so okay. So I showed you I sent you two things. I sent you problem definition. There's a whole bunch of problems. And then I also sent this. This is just my way of explaining some things. Functional plan for profit versus a business plan. Profit is the number one expense. Explained all this. Okay, so both of those. Okay, so part of your homework is to create a findings outline, and you want to make it relevant to Jeffrey's pipe. So this is meant to simplify, not make it complicated, but just listen to what I'm telling you to do. Okay, so forget the checklist. So we bill out at $3.25 per hour. So your survey has to be worth that. Okay. So when it comes to the findings, you're going to do a bunch of different things, but one of the things you're going to have is this outline or summary. Okay. So these are talking points for your summary. So you just need to cut and paste or save it. You can put the client's name at the top here, save it to your desktop, save it as a specific to the client, and then get rid of the things that aren't appropriate. Okay, so for example, I might get rid of, I don't know, accountability, whatever. I'm gonna keep the things that are relevant and get rid of the ones that aren't. But save the document. Don't delete the original because you're gonna use it again. This is to make your findings outline simple so that you don't have to type and reinvent the wheel and all that kind of stuff. Because you need to do something like this. One, it's talking points for your survey, and two, it's work product that you're going to be, that the client will see. We don't hand the work product separate document and delete the things that don't apply and use it that way, or cut and paste. Okay? That's what this is for. Everybody got it? Got it, got it, got it? So it's meant to help you to be easier. In my day, we had to write everything out. It was tremendously laborious. This is to save time. This will only take you a few minutes, but you'll have something professional for the client. Okay? Okay. Okay. Let's close that out. So, this is for today. Okay. All right. So, all right. All right. So, quick. This is the end of day challenge. Did you miss the % no report? No, you'll figure out how to do it from the instructions in the homework. Just follow the instructions. I didn't show it to you. You'll figure it out. And if anybody has trouble, I'll go through it in the morning. Okay, it's easier. It's easier to follow instructions. So to me, of course, I'm not a video person, but I guess everybody learns differently. But anyway, they do. But okay, what is another name for Form 88? What is another name for Form 88? What is another name for Form 88? Okay, so working agreement. We call it the working agreement, but you're going to use the multi-agreement for the purposes of the homework, and that's the agreement that you'll use probably most often when you're in the field. Okay, if a client gets behind on payments to the IRS, what does TABIS help them with? Okay, I don't have many answers, but tax defense, right? Tax defense. Okay, and really with tax defense, so what they can help them with is, first of all, abatement of penalties and interest. They can help with a payment plan. The thing about tax defense is they know how to work through the IRS. Okay, they know what's acceptable. They're not going to feel threatened by the IRS. Whereas a layperson, is kind of put in a tough position because you're afraid to say I can't do that because they'll shut you down, right? So they can kind of negotiate that, and they're not afraid that they won't let you get shut down. So that's the thing that's really good about it. Okay, and they know how to work through the system. They know how to negotiate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, when does a go ahead start? When does a go ahead start? Okay, so the go ahead starts the next business day. Um, unless it's, so it always starts the next business day. And steps to, I don't know what you're asking, Tony. You should ask the question though. Anyway, it starts the next business day. Except if it's a consulting that, and you're selling it on a Thursday, it'll start Monday. Your SSD will help you with that. I am not telling you to get delayed goes, deferred goes. You can't get those. Okay. So it's not even normal. It starts the next business day. We don't accept deferred goes. We do not accept deferred. You are not allowed to get a deferred go. Okay. You can't get a delayed go because you have to talk to your SSD if you're running into that problem. All right. So next business day, whatever. Okay. Why do we always call our client a client? Why do we always call the client a client? Okay. Yeah. Because we're providing professional services. That's why. And if you call the person a customer, they're going to think you're a salesperson, right? My customer, they're going to think you're a salesperson. When you go to the doctor doesn't say my customer. When you go to a lawyer, the lawyer doesn't say my customer. When you go to your accountant doesn't say my customer. They all refer to you as clients or patients. Okay, so it's the same thing. We provide professional services. So you always want to call the client the client. Okay. And you will get chastised if you don't, because it just gets you into trouble, unnecessary trouble. Okay. What is the starting billing rate that an analyst sells at? What is the starting billing rate that an analyst sells at? First answers were right. $3.25 per hour. Not 15, not 17.5. $3.25 per hour. Okay. That's for the general consulting, that's the billing rate. Why do we meet resistance when we go to a client? Why would we meet resistance when we go to do a survey, to meet a client? Okay, so these are all kind of valid. So cold feet, that could be internet. The internet. I actually had, this is kind of into this though. There was this poor new guy in his first week. He went to this client, and the client came in the second day, and the client went ballistic on him and said, "You need to sign this thing, and you're going to pay me for the time I'm spending." It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, and all this weird stuff. The guy looked up, and it was the company. It wasn't our company. And honestly, it was crazy. Like the guy was crazy. Some clients are like they're most clients are not, but sometimes you run into some very interesting things. Anyway, it was weird. Anyway, yeah, I mean it's internet. That was internet BS to the 100th degree. Buyer's remorse, fear of findings. They may have things to hide, trust issues, fear, because they have things to hide and don't want to face reality. They might think that we're selling something and they don't want to incur additional expense because they don't understand ROI at this point. Trying to hide something, ego. They may have negative assumptions. It's just generally it's buyer's remorse, or sometimes it's like life got in the way and they had to cancel, um, whatever. But if it's buyer's remorse, a lot of times we can overcome it, and that's the key thing. So just because they don't want to talk to you when you get there doesn't mean it's the end of the road. Okay. Can you open a job and get a go if the client canceled the survey? If they called in to cancel the survey, can you open your survey and get a go? Okay, yes. Everybody got that. Um, the best thing to do is to think in terms of with them, what's in it for them, and get back to, uh, really, what did they talk to sales about? What did they want to accomplish in the first place? If you can do that, you can get them back on track to seeing a benefit from doing the survey. Don't try to sell the survey. Okay, what document used in closing helps us screen for a client's level of commitment? Okay, the 10 commitments. No, not the 88, the 10 commitments. We just went through that. Okay, what meeting with the client precedes the findings meeting and why? What meeting with the client precedes the findings meeting and why? Very good, Clyde. Anybody else? What meeting precedes with the client precedes the findings meeting and why? It's a toughie. It's not a strategy call. Okay, I'm going to tell you preliminary findings. Okay, good job, Clyde. The reason you do the preliminary findings precedes the findings because you don't want to go right into findings without knowing that your client is neutral or better, right? So the preliminary findings, you test the waters, you go over the client's homework, if the client is neutral or better, you can roll into findings. If they're not, you want to stop, strategize with your SSD. You got to get the client back to neutral. All is not lost if the client goes backwards at night. Okay, they might go home, they might get thinking, and they whatever they think. Okay, it doesn't matter. They start getting nervous, they start getting scared, whatever. You can reel them back. Okay, you can get them back to neutral. Um, it just, here's what happens. Sometimes they come in the next day and they're stronger than ever. Okay. Sometimes they come in the next day and they're nervous. Sometimes they're afraid you won't even accept them as a client. So there's different things that you're gonna see, but you got to have your preliminary findings. Don't go into findings. It's funny because if you go into findings, you're not going to get a go. You're not going to. If the client says, I only have 10 minutes, what do you want to talk about? Don't go into findings, okay? Because you're not going to get a go. Okay, you're not. The client can't control the survey. So if you start to run out of time, then you run out of time. So preliminary findings is to review the homework, and at the same time, if the client isn't neutral or better, then you got to stop, talk to your SSD for strategy. You might have to condition more or whatever, okay? Because sometimes they get scared, nervous, whatever, you know? So, all is not lost though. Okay. So I'm going to tell you about a few more clients. And I want you to hear about these because they tie back to some of the things I said. Okay. Well, this was kind of interesting, though. Let me tell you about this one because it has to do with right to this printer in Chicago. It was a $5 million company in Chicago, not downtown, but in the city of Chicago. And I go in, we're sitting in the boardroom, and we're talking about, I say to them, okay, well, what's your break-even sales line? What does it take to cover the nut? So he says to me, well, our break-even is X. The problem is the bank said if we don't reach our break even every month, they're going to pull our line of credit. He said, so what we've had to do is we've had to trick our software and we've had to elongate our month until we reach the sales volume that the bank needs, and then we start the next month. So right now we're a month behind. Oh my goodness. So do you think I got to go on that? I mean, that's not really a good thing to do. So I got to go on that. I got to go on that, of course, because they were. I mean, that's like fraud. I think, that's certainly. You could get into a lot of trouble for that. Okay, I'm going to tell you about this one too because this is kind of interesting. I went to this job, so I get my notice of sale, and it's like it's a $7 million company. I'm going places. All right. So I drive. It's in Wisconsin. I drive to my client. I go in, and it's a residence. It's a house, and we do resident surveys. We do because a lot of owners start in their homes or have their business in their homes, and it is what it is. Anyway, so I go and we sit around the kitchen table, and I have my opening with the parents and the son. And they made these trailers, and what became apparent, they made these trailers, and they made a lot of them. Somehow they made a lot of sales. But what was interesting is it was the parents, the son, and there was one employee, and the employee was the son's friend. And lo and behold, so they were nice people. I worked at their kitchen table. They were out making trailers or whatever. It was fine. Because you got to stay on site. Anyway, I gotta go. I'll tell you what I gotta go on. I gotta go because the son said, I need an employee handbook. He said, my friend he said, we don't have a rule book. He comes in late, and I don't want to destroy my friendship over that. If I had a set of rules, we could show him, here's the rules. But we don't have that. That was the go, believe it or not. And the emotional thing was, I don't want to wreck my friendship. The logical thing was now I have something objective in place. So I had developed it further, an organizational structure for everyone, a profit plan, matching the organizational structure back to the plan for profit. So I expanded it beyond just a handbook. But that's where the go was. Okay. I'll tell you about this one too. So I went to this client, I pull up to this client in Wisconsin, and I have an 11 o'clock start. And I pull up, and as I pull up, it's like a strip mall. I pull up, and a guy jumps in his truck and goes roaring off. I say, uh-oh. I walk into the client, and the gal says, oh, he just left. And I said, okay, is it possible to call him? She calls him, he doesn't answer. So I said, well, do you mind if I wait while we wait for him to call back? And she said, no, have a seat. Anyway, so I hear the gal over there, and she's talking about QuickBooks and stuff like that. And I don't know, I kind of chit-chatted with her. She was on the phone with QuickBooks, and she says, oh, she's talking to QuickBooks. We have QuickBooks problems. And I said, oh, you have QuickBooks problems. And you're talking to Intuit. I said, you know, it's funny because we service QuickBooks better than they do because our clients are users and they're techies. And she says, you help with QuickBooks? And I said, yeah. And she said, what do you do? Tell me what you do again. Because I said, where are you from again? I said, you know, Global Resources, and I'm the analyst and whatever. She says, and he signed up for this? I said, yeah. And she says, wow. So she says to the gal when she gets off the phone, they help with QuickBooks. And so we were chit-chatting. So then she gets on the phone, she calls the guy again, she reaches him this time and says, you need to get back here. They know how to fix QuickBooks. He said, I'll be back soon. He comes back, I had to go the next day, okay? And it was happenstance. But I didn't divulge anything about him or anything like that, but I kind of made them a client. I mean, it just kind of fell into my lap, but I was able to show them some sort of benefit, and she got on the phone and said, you got to get back here. And I got my go. Another one I'll tell you about this client. I went to this client. So this is where asset protection comes in. So I went to this client. It was in Illinois, and it was a little manufacturing company, like $2 million. And I go in and I sit down with the guy, and he says, okay, this is what he said, my operations are fine, but I am very concerned about protecting my assets. And he says, the reason I'm concerned about that is because there was a situation in town. This couple owned a retirement home, and they owned a tour company, and it had a bus. And so the bus the bus had to take a route. Everybody knew, don't go under the underpass. You always have to go around. So one day the driver was ill, and they told the substitute driver, okay, you can't go under the underpass, you got to go around. But for whatever reason, the driver ignored it, went under the underpass. The top deck, it was a double-decker bus, and there was a college student in the top deck, and it sheared off the top deck of the bus and killed the college student. So this couple immediately, of course, they shut down the tour company, and a week later, their retirement business was shut down. Assisted living, whatever it was shut down. They declared business bankruptcy. They declared personal bankruptcy. They ended up getting a divorce. He said, I am, extremely afraid of something like that happening to me. I feel like there's a bullseye on my sign that says, come take my stuff. So that was an easy go. It was an easy tax go. We helped him with asset protection. He ended up implementing the asset protection. That's why a lot of clients want help, because there's many cases where insurance does not kick in. Insurance doesn't kick in if your driver is medicated, like on certain kinds of medication, if they stop for a beer. I mean, there's a lot of cases where your insurance isn't going to kick in if they have a company vehicle. You know what? There was not too many weeks ago. It was really pretty horrible. An analyst was going to meet with a client, and They met with him on the first day, and they were commenting about how nice their building was. They had just moved into this new building. It was really nice. It really looked good. Obviously, they're preparing for their retirement, all this kind of stuff. The next day, he went in to do the findings, and the client wasn't there. He called the client. The client, his driver, he had a tow truck driver. The driver had gotten in an accident. He hit a building, wiped out a subdivision. I mean, it was a really bad accident. Wiped it out. He was in the hospital. He had drugs in his system. This guy, he stood to lose everything he just had. He did not have any asset protection. And again, insurance doesn't cover a lot of these situations. So asset protection helps prevent some of this. It creates better legal firewalls. You want to be judgment proof. You want to be bulletproof so that you don't lose everything to things that employees do. So that's asset protection. That was just awful. And anyway, we see this a lot. Believe it or not, we see it a lot. That's why clients want asset protection. That's why we do a lot of tax projects, because who wants to overpay in tax? Not many people. But a bigger concern is losing what you have. Okay, I'm going to tell you about this one. So this is a case where the job is not the go or the no-go. It's what we do with it. Okay, so it's not like it's not the job. Okay, it's what the analyst does with it. Okay, so I went to a job in Missouri, and on my way to the client, my SSD called me and said, your client canceled. He had to go out of town. I said, okay, well, let me stop by. I'm almost there. I'm going to stop by and see if there's any salvage, if I can save it or anything. Anyway, I get to the client. The client is out of town. There's nobody that I can make a client, and he won't be back till the next week. So I'm dead. So I call my SSD. Nope. So my SSD says, do you want to help this other guy get his job open? He went to a job. It was a resurvey. And after 15 minutes, he said there was nothing there. And my SSD said, I'm inclined to disagree. So I said, okay. So I called the analyst. I arranged to meet with him. He kind of gave me the lowdown. We went together to the client. As we pulled up to the client, as we got out of the car, went into the building, the client was about to get in his truck and go see one of his customers. And he said, that's okay. I don't have to go now. Sure, come on in. Let's talk. Really nice guy. So went in, and I had already primed the analyst that I have to be in control. You got to sit on the sidelines because two people can't do this. Okay, so we went into his office. He sat on the side. I sat in front of the client. Again, he practically had his feet up, and it was a resurvey. We had been there a week or two prior. So I said, so I understand, we were here a week or two prior. Yep. So tell me about the survey. Oh, it was good, blah, blah, blah. So I started asking him some operational questions. He didn't move forward. He said, yeah, I'm good. And I said, okay. So then I started asking him operational questions. So what about your profit? What about this? What about that? Hit a wall, hit a wall, hit a wall, hit a wall. I was getting nowhere. So then I said, okay, so what about in terms of what happens if something happens to you? Do you have a business succession plan? What do you have in terms of that? And he goes, no. So what would happen to the business? I said, well, what about your wife? Can she run the business? Do you have kids? He has kids. Okay. Do you have a will? Do you have a trust? So he says to me, he goes from leaning back with his feet up, to putting his feet down, to leaning forward, to say, keep talking. I got control at that point, right? That's when I got control. Keep talking. So I explained why What would happen if something happened to him? You can't turn the clock back. If you don't have a succession plan, you're going to leave your wife a mess. What about your employees? What about their families? They're counting on you for the continuity of the business. You don't have a will. And even though everything might go to your wife, you're going to leave your mess for your wife, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And he says, I need to do something about this. So then I said, did we run a tax illustration while we were there? And he says, I don't think so. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out. I'm going to see if we ran an illustration. I'll come back to you in a minute. And I called in. I think I probably called in front of him and asked tax Elizabeth. Elizabeth used to work in tax. I need a tax illustration, blah, blah, blah. Did we run it? Yes, we did. Can you send it to me? I sat with him. I said, is this valid? Is this valid? We made a few adjustments. I sent it in. I got it back, and I said, okay, I'm going to sit down with you. I sat down with him within, so everything within, I don't know, hour and a half, I got a tax go. So I made a couple $1,000s. The other analyst said there was nothing there. The reason the other analyst said there was nothing there is because rather than ask good questions to get the client thinking, he just tried to sell consulting. Okay, he just went in, how about this, how about that? And the client didn't want it, But when I asked the question and then conditioned, and I taught him something. This is why it's important. This is what happens. He said, I got to do something about that. And it was kind of like that simple. It was amazing. It was kind of amazing. And so the analyst who said there was nothing there after 15 minutes, he lost a couple $1,000s. The point of that is that I didn't try to sell consulting. I just went back to the questions. What we do best is that we talk about the problems and the costs of the problems. And that's exactly what I did. And I taught him why it was important. And when he saw the relevance, he said, you're right, I got to do something about this. And it created instant urgency in the whole bit. So that's the point. This guy, he didn't listen to the client. He gave up quickly. After 15 minutes, he said there was nothing there. 15 minutes. And I don't think he even asked about tax. Anyway, whatever. So that's why we go into clients when there's the previous analyst. What he did, as soon as he got a no-go on the consulting, I guess he didn't bother with the tax, which is just crazy. So the hot button, the hot button became the tax. Okay, so I had another situation where I went in and it was a no-go from not long prior, the previous week, might have even been a few days. If sales season in, they'll send somebody. I mean, this is profitable for us. This is lucrative. So I went in, and what it was a partnership, and the one partner wanted to do the tax. The other partner wasn't there. So the previous analyst said, well, I guess I can't help you, took a no-go. So I went in, and here we are again, that other partner's not around. So what I did was I set the table again for tax and asked a lot of questions, got the partner to agree he definitely wanted to do the tax and why. I then did a research call, and I said, here's the situation, okay? My client understands the importance of doing asset protection, doing tax planning. He's tired of throwing money down the drain, all this kind of stuff. He doesn't have a buy-sell agreement with his partner. It's not funded, so if something happens, his partner's wife will become his partner. And here he sits on his own again. His partner's not here. His partner's out of the country. What can we do to help this guy with his partner out of the country? And my SSD said, go ahead and get the go-ahead. We'll start working with this guy, and then we'll work with the partner at a future time. So I got the go. That's all it took. I got that because I did a research call, and my SSD said, do it. Okay, so I'm going to tell you one other one, because this is like a big deal. Okay, so I get my assignment. It's a big company in Houston. So I fly to Houston. Um, it's a resurvey. We had been there a week or two prior, and I go in, and it's an engineer, mechanical engineer, and they made big uh, pieces of equipment for oil and gas. Okay, so they were a $90 million company. 90 million, that's big. Okay, so um, I go in, and the previous analyst got a no-go. So I go in and say, okay, so we were here before. Tell me about your experience. Oh, that analyst was so salesy. He was just selling. He refused to, he just kept pushing tax. I have absolutely no interest in tax. He pushed tax. He wouldn't do the financials, and whatever. He was so salesy. I said, okay. So anyway, I had a fairly quick opening with him because he was a busy guy or whatever, but he gave me the financials, and then he said, he said, I said, did he tell you, did he explain how we work? Oh yeah, he explained how we work. Yeah, you bill out at, $400 an hour plus expenses, and you always start the next business day. And I thought, well, he did a good job of that. He says, not in a million years would I start the next business day. I don't make decisions like that. And I said, okay. So anyway, I knew what my hedge was, whatever. So I got the financials, and I started to work the financials. I realized that I could not analyze the financials in the traditional sense that we do because their revenues didn't match their expenses. So they had these huge losses one year, huge profitability the next. They didn't do any work in process accounting, so there was no matching. So it was totally nonsensical. Okay, it made no sense. I could not. So I went into him and I said, I cannot analyze these financials in a traditional sense, and here's why. And he said, that's what I needed to know. But I did interview every single key person, and the other analysts didn't bother. And there were like 10 of them. And so I ran a 3-day survey. The other analyst was there for 2 days, and did this text illustration. I didn't even bother with that. Loud and clear, the client was not interested. I ran a 3-day survey. I spent the whole second day interviewing key people. And one of the key people, I went into his office, and this is just amusing. His desk, he was standing up. And the reason he was standing up is because he had like 3-4 feet of paper all over his entire desk. He didn't file anything. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, he couldn't even sit at his desk. He had to stand. I said, how do you find something? He said, well, I said, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. And he goes, I know. Anyway, so I arranged to meet with him the next day or whatever. I went in the next morning. It was all gone. He had filed everything. Anyway, that's the power of conditioning. But it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. So anyway, I interviewed all of the people. So my findings on Friday was it was not it didn't have as much substantive as I would have liked, especially for an engineer, because they like data. It didn't have that much because I didn't have good financials, so I did some ratio calculations. I did have input from his key people, so I used a lot of that. However, one of his key people sat in my findings meeting, which made it a little icky. And then I really talked. So no tax illustration. I did some ratios, looked at his balance sheet, talked a little bit about that. Then I talked about reverse engineering the business for a minimum mandatory profit. Then I went through his employee stuff, and he said, okay, what's next? And I said, well, here's the thing. So I knew what his objection was going to be. He never starts the next business day. So I said, if you, obviously I'm recommending, consulting. And he said, yeah. And I said, so I know you said that you don't make decisions, you don't start right away, whatever. I said, however, I'm going to strongly recommend that unless you have a very good reason not to start Monday, that you start Monday, and here's why. A very important part of what I do is transition work. So I have to take everything I learned about your company, and there's a lot that I now know, and transfer that to the project manager. I am going to Africa on Sunday. I will not be able to do that when I'm in Kenya on a safari. And that was a true thing. And so unless you have a very good reason not to go forward, I would not to go forward for Monday, I would recommend that you do. And he said, I can do Monday. 800 hours. 800 hours. That was it was over $250,000 of consulting. And it not only that, so it was $250,000 of consulting. I made over $30,000, okay, on that one survey. Here's the thing. The first analyst got a no-go. The first analyst got a no-go because he didn't listen to the client. You know, he didn't listen. He did not figure out what the client wanted. He just decided that he was going to sell tax because the client was profitable, and he didn't listen to the client. And I listened to the client, and I knew the tax. I really knew the tax wasn't in. Did he help me in that he made it very clear what the through his process what the client didn't want. He also did a good institutional because it made it easy for me, but he lost out, I gained. But the point is, okay, not that I was a hero. I'm analytical, and engineers don't tend to like sales type personalities. They're not comfortable being sold to. They like data, and he was heavy on the sales part. So that worked against him. But the point is, it's not the job that's the go or a no-go. That analyst would have told you that job was a no-go. No, he got a no-go. And I, I gotta go. But I gotta go because I listen. So the moral of the story, the reason I tell you this is that a job is not a go or a no-go, and you never know what's going to happen when you go. And you can't give up because, honestly, like, people say, no, I don't want help, and in the end, they just say, you're right. Okay, I'm going to tell you one more real quick. So I went, because this is another case in point. So this is a former client. So he did some consulting, and so I was sent in, and the client said, I'm not happy. I'm not a happy client. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, well, I'll certainly figure out what happened. When I go work with a client, when I do an analysis, a former client, I figure out, I do my due diligence. What went right, what didn't go so right. Whether you tell me we walk on water or something else, I'm going to do that. And he said, okay. Well, I ran my survey. Okay, and I don't even know how long it had been. It honestly didn't matter, but I ran a good survey. And so what I found out when I interviewed the key people was that he was not good at follow through. So on the second day, I started conditioning him. Why are your people saying you're not good at follow through? And he goes, well, yeah, I do have a problem with that. I said, well, do you think that could have been part of the problem with the project? Well, yeah, it could have been. So, but he had said he was so unhappy and everything like that. I talked to my SSD. I said, is there anything we can do to kind of appease him? Because he's going to give me grief at the end because he said he wasn't happy yesterday. And he says, yeah, you can do this. You can add some non-billable hours at the end. Sometimes we'll throw in like an olive branch if a client says they had a bad experience for whatever reason. Anyway, so at the end of it, I'm thinking I probably won't get a go, but now I have something. So I do my findings, and he says, okay, what's next? And I said, well, nothing. And he says, no, I need help. I said, you need help? Yeah. And I said, you said you're not happy with us. And he said, yeah, I know, but you're the best option. I need your help. And I'm like, I said, this is weird. But the guy, he just, you know what? So he he was frustrated because a lot of clients think it's going to be a magic wand, and they find out it's not, and whatever. And when I held him accountable to, you got to do your part, and what about your follow through? And he kind of said, yeah, I didn't do that. And he just said, you guys are the best option. So I got my go. I got my go. So it doesn't matter. You know what? We work through a lot of different things. Honestly, we work through a lot of different things, and you can. It's the clients will tell you what they want you to know when you walk in. That is the fact of the matter. Um, that's the fact of the matter. So, you know. Anyway, okay. Any questions? Anybody there? Are you awake? Are you there? Okay, good. Okay, so anyway, that's the end of the stories. I do it to illustrate a point, and you know, obviously experience helps, but that's why, again, why you rely on an SSD to help you and all the rest, because you come to realize that even though clients will give you objections when you walk in or partway through, it's not the end of it. It's not the end. It doesn't mean it's over. They're just saying that at the moment. So it's not a no-go until it's really a no-go. So, or it's not a no open. It's not until, so I believed in exhausting all possibilities. And I figured if they don't kick me out, then there's still something nagging at them that they want. And maybe I just haven't figured it out. So anyway, okay. So I'm going to sign out. So I've got more calls to make. If I call again, it's from the Wheeling number. Please take my call if at all possible, because if I don't speak to you tonight, I need to speak to you before class tomorrow, type of thing. And there's a lot of you on the East Coast, and so it's not going to be. It might be, in an hour, might be hour and a half, whatever. Because I really try to move from the East Coast to the West Coast. But anyway, so I will call you quickly. You have your homework. So the goal is 2 years of Jeffries. And then the other things that you're doing tomorrow, we will do findings. Eric will be back to do I-9s, or Shante, one of the two will be in to do I-9s. Shante is another HR person. We'll do findings. We'll talk about travel. We'll talk about administration, that sort of thing. And the goal is to finish a little early tomorrow, probably by roughly 3:30. Okay. So hopefully you'll get finished at a reasonable time this evening, and I will either talk to you this evening if I haven't talked to you. And I'll see you in the morning. Okay. So signing out. Have a good evening.